I wonder if you could just tell me what happened as you were killing her. Did she give birth to a baby?
You know, you're pushing your luck.
I'm sorry.
November 1987. Tommy Lynn Sells commits the most despicable murder imaginable after beating a woman till she gave birth spontaneously. Unfortunately, this wouldn't end for the poor woman, as what Sells did next was as shocking as it was brutal. Here are 7 disturbing interviews with baby killers.
An Estill woman is in the Holmes County Jail tonight charged with killing her own daughter. At least one witness says they saw Lewis pushing the little girl underwater.
August 8, 2007, Amanda Lewis makes a frantic 911 call stating that she had found her daughter, Adriana, unresponsive in their high pool in Estill, Florida. However, the case takes a dramatic turn when Adriana's half-brother AJ tells investigators that he'd seen his mother dunk Adriana in the pool as a form of punishment.
Do you like it?
She was quick to throw a fit, but she was still a good child. She was still a good little girl.
It seems Lewis loved her daughter, but it's also possible that her daughter's quick temper was too much for her to handle. Could this have led her down the dark path of murder? No one would have believed Lewis was responsible for her daughter's death if not for her son, AJ, who says he saw her drown Adriana.
Why would he accuse you of drowning your daughter?
He does like to tell stories. I mean, he's got, I don't know if I'd say weird, but he does have a very big imagination.
According to AJ, Adriana screamed for him to call the police as his mom pushed Adriana's head under the water. So who's telling the truth, Lewis or AJ?
How would you feel about taking a polygraph?
I'd be fine with it.
You think that might be beneficial?
Well, evidently, because I know, everybody's looking at me.
However, the one problem was that when it was time for her to take the polygraph test, Lewis refused. Maybe she had something she was hiding and feared the polygraph would reveal those secrets. As far as the prosecution was concerned, the testimony of AJ was reliable enough, even though he was only a kid.
There was only one time that I really did spank Adriana, and she had little marks on her little backside cheeks. But
Why did you do that?
she wrote throughout my car with a permanent marker.
What did she write?
Loser.
Now we're getting somewhere with the answers. Her daughter called her a loser, and it seems Lewis didn't have a good relationship with Adriana. This was also confirmed by Lewis's mother in court.
One of your colleagues at the care centre remembered you saying you were so annoyed about Adriana's behaviour one day. You said, I want to kill her. Now, given what happened, people could put 2 and 2 together and think, well, there we are.
I did not say I wanted to kill her. I said, oh my goodness, I could have just killed her.
Her colleagues at work also testify that Lewis did indeed make such statements about her kids. She seemed fed up with them.
What did you mean when you said, I could have killed her?
That it just frustrated me to the point of being angry.
While the testimonies of most children aren't reliable, that of AJ is quite different. He had provided a lot of details, which the police confirmed to be all true. But it wasn't just AJ's testimony that put the nail in this case. It was also the autopsy. The doctors who examined Adriana's body noticed injuries on her face that were consistent with that of a hand being placed on her face. This evidence corroborates the testimony of AJ, who claimed his mom had placed her palm over Adriana's face to push her under the water. March 2008. After all evidence is considered, the jury deliberates for only 2 hours before finding Amanda Lewis guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. AJ has been adopted by new parents and won't be able to see his biological mother until he's an adult.
You also killed children.
Some get killed, yes.
Now, why would that happen?
I didn't want them to live through the pain I lived through.
November 1987. Tommy Lynn Sells commits one of the most horrific murders when he takes out an entire family and an infant that was just born at that very moment. It's an act that even he would be too ashamed to talk about.
I wonder if you could just tell me
what happened as you were killing her. Did she give birth to a baby?
You know, you're pushing your luck.
I'm sorry.
Let's not get into blood and guts, because that's what you're trying to get into.
The Dardeen family consisted of Russell Keith, his wife Ruby Elaine, and their son Peter. Ruby Elaine was also pregnant with the couple's second child. On that evening, Sells, who had befriended Russell, was invited into their home. What followed was a night of unimaginable horror. Sells first attacked Russell, beating him to death. He then turned his attention to Ruby Elaine, who was 7 months pregnant. Sells took advantage of her and brutally beat her, causing her to go into labor. And tragically, the newborn baby girl was also beaten to death by Sells. Peter, the couple's son, wasn't spared either. He was brutally killed with a baseball bat. This was a cold case for years, with no clear motive or suspects. It wasn't until the 2000s, after Sells was convicted of another murder, that he finally confessed to the Dardeen family killings. And one thing's clear, Sells doesn't feel remorse for the evil he did.
I am hatred. When you look at me, you look at hate.
When I look at you, I look at hate?
When you look at me, you know what hate is. 'Cause I don't know what love is. 2 words I don't like to use is love and sorry.
One of the most disturbing aspects of Sells' crimes was his complete lack of remorse. He often targeted vulnerable individuals, including children. In one particular heinous act, he would murder Kayleen Harris and attempt to kill her friend, Crystal Searles, who miraculously survived and later helped identify him. If he hadn't been caught, he would have continued. To him, killing was the only pleasurable thing.
The first time I did a shot of dope, it was the best feeling I ever had in my life. And the first time I killed somebody, it was such a rush. And it was just like that shot of dope. Every time I did it, it was that rush again. And I started chasing that high.
January 2nd, 2000, Sells' criminal career came to an end when he was arrested after attacking Crystal Searles. He was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Towards the end of the interview, Sells made a subtle threat suggesting his desire to kill the interviewer.
So what if I called you something that you didn't like? And you'd think about killing me?
Well, if we was in a fight and...
What happens when my head goes down to the concrete?
Well, what do you think happened? It cracks like a coconut.
April 3rd, 2014. Tommy was executed by lethal injection in Texas.
Pillowcase or whatever it was, a cushion covered over her head. Put her into the sleeping bag. No, I just slung it in the corner.
1993. The world was given a rare and horrifying glimpse into the mind of one of the most notorious child killers in modern British history, Robert Black. During this interview with renowned sex offender profiler Ray Wire, Black shows the depth of his depravity and the true extent of his crimes.
We don't know how many children. It could be in the 30s, 40s.
Now here, Robert Black admits to having as many as 40 victims, but only 4 were confirmed. He was convicted of the abduction and murder of 4 girls: Jennifer Carty, Susan Maxwell, Sarah Harper, and Carolyn Hogg, who was practically an infant. What's even more troubling is what Black did to these little kids before he finished them off. In his twisted mind, he fancied these little ones as partners he could have fun with. He even describes this fantasy as he speaks.
In my mind, the ideal situation would be a child that was completely willing and eager. Somebody once said to me that their motto was, when they're big enough, they're old enough. I tended to agree with that.
To him, no one was too young for his sick fantasies, and Robert Black often cited his very own traumatic childhood experiences as a way to rationalize his heinous crimes. His early years were marked by severe physical and emotional abuse, which he claimed had a profound impact on his psyche. Black described being sexually abused by a male staff member at a children's home, an experience he said deeply scarred him and influenced his later actions. Black's job as a delivery driver provided him with the perfect cover to carry out his heinous crimes. Employed by a London-based poster company, Black would travel extensively across the UK, delivering posters to various locations. Now, this constant movement allowed him to scout for potential victims without arousing suspicion.
Get on the road in the flats when I was delivering. I might sit down and talk to her for a few minutes later. Try and touch her. Sometimes succeeded, sometimes not.
The interior of his delivery van was modified to suit his sinister purposes. Black kept items like ropes, gags, and sleeping bags, which he then used to restrain and conceal his victims. The setup allowed him to evade capture for years, as he could quickly move his victims across vast distances, often crossing police jurisdictions, which further complicated the investigations.
Put that pillowcase or whatever it was, a cushion covered over around. Put her into the sleeping bag. No, I just slung it in the corner.
To him, no kid was safe.
I suppose the only way a parent could prevent something like that happening is keep the child tied to the apron string all the time, virtually put them on a lead. Never let them out of their sight.
On January 12, 2016, Robert Black died of a heart attack while serving his life sentence at HMP Magaberry in Northern Ireland.
So I need to know how the fentanyl got in the sippy cup. Because right now it's not an accident. Okay.
September 2019. A jury found Janaa Pratt guilty of ending the life of her own child with a sippy cup filled with fentanyl. What's even more troubling was Pratt's attitude during the interview with police officers.
Scientifically, it's impossible for your daughter to put fentanyl in a sippy cup. Okay. Physically, it's impossible for her to do. Scientifically, that's another story. But right now, that's how she died.
April 2018. Janaa Pratt, a 23-year-old mom from Pittsburgh's East Hills neighborhood, called 911 after her daughter, Charlotte Napper Talley, became unresponsive. Despite efforts to revive her, Charlotte was pronounced dead at Children's Hospital. An autopsy showed that Charlotte had ingested a lethal dose of fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid, from her sippy cup. It all seemed like an accident initially, but investigations revealed that Janaa had done this intentionally, because she wanted the baby to go to sleep. But even more disturbing was the lack of remorse or emotions Janaa showed. She simply didn't seem sad about the demise of her daughter. First, detectives had to determine who gave the baby the sippy cup. Janaa's response was mischievous.
That pink sippy cup, do you remember
I
what
didn't
it
even
was?
see the sippy cup.
Did you give her the sippy cup at all?
I didn't see the sippy cup.
Okay.
Janaa knows that admitting she had anything to do with the sippy cup would link her to the fentanyl found inside it. She tries her best to play smart and dumb about that sippy cup, but she slips into her lies almost immediately.
Do you remember it being in her bedroom? That sippy cup?
I think I might have found the sippy cup on the way to... I'm not sure. I just remember, I believe, putting the sippy cup in her bed with her.
Okay.
Made a big mistake by admitting she gave her baby the sippy cup, so she tries to get more defensive.
I'm gonna step out for a little bit. Let you think about this.
There's nothing to think about.
Janaa was trying to get out of this interview. If she was innocent, she'd be at least interested in getting some answers to what happened to her child. Her next response is even more snappy.
Am I under arrest?
No.
Are there any more questions?
I just want to know how it got in there. That's the big question.
I don't know how it got in there.
Now she sees an opportunity to escape further questioning and doubles down on it, showing no emotion that would be natural for a mother who just lost her kin.
Any more questions?
No.
Am I under arrest?
No.
Can I go?
Sure.
She does leave, but doesn't escape justice. June 2019, an Allegheny County jury found Pratt guilty of involuntary manslaughter and child endangerment. She was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in state prison. Janaa ended the life of her child because she wanted to have the freedom to smoke marijuana and relax.
Listen. We have a dead baby in room 206, okay? You were the last person with Trinity.
May 2024, in a deeply troubling case, Malik Kyrie Kennedy, a 27-year-old man from Duluth, Georgia, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the brutal murder of Trinity Kyles. Footage of the interrogation reveals that the incident is a lot worse than it seemed. May 2, 2021, when Trinity's mother, Rose Kyles, returned from work, she found her daughter unresponsive and not breathing. Despite attempts to revive her, the child was pronounced dead on the scene. Trinity had several bruises on her cheeks, and her forehead was swollen. Malik Kyrie Kennedy had a lot of questions to answer, starting with what happened on that day.
She's on her tablet or doing whatever she does, but like I told Rose, she just has this thing where she'll flip out and start just doing the most, so she just always does the most, and that's pretty much it.
Malik couldn't handle the tantrums from the toddler. She was getting under his skin, which seemed to be a growing problem over time, and the mom was aware of this problem. However, she didn't take those red flags seriously. Despite Malik not having the maturity to handle the girl, the mom still left her daughter with him for hours every time she went to work. Malik reveals how things got out of hand that morning.
I said, it started from her just screaming and spilling her juice and just spilling it, like doing it on purpose and doing things like I said, kick the lamp over, or she might just spilling juice and screaming.
The behavior of Trinity is normal for any child, but how Malik responded is going to send chills down your spine. The detectives asked Malik how he punished her anytime she was acting up.
Now, did you ever give her any medicine today?
Yeah, I did.
What did you give her?
Melatonin.
So how many drops? Like, how much did you give her today?
Pretty good amount. Like, it was about halfway, almost.
Here, Malik confesses to giving little Trinity about a half a bottle of melatonin, which is clearly an overdose. This was a desperate act to shut her up so he could play his video game. What he didn't consider was the fact that he was putting Trinity's life in danger, or he just didn't care. The detectives then bring out a doll for Malik to demonstrate how he handled the girl.
How do you normally grab Trinity?
Like, I might pick her up, like this.
Okay. So how did you do it today?
Same thing.
But listen, man, you need to be honest with me and tell me what happened in that room, okay? Because a bottle of melatonin isn't gonna hurt a baby.
Maybe it's because I was just too aggressive.
At this point, it's clear that not only did Malik overdose Trinity, but he also handled her very aggressively. This confession tallies with evidence of injuries found on Trinity's head. The investigation shows a horrifying sequence of events. Kennedy had violently shaken and struck Trinity, causing severe injuries. Instead of seeking medical attention, he chose to drink alcohol, smoke marijuana, and played video games while Trinity lay dying. The court found Kennedy guilty of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated battery, and first-degree cruelty to children. For this, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
He was to sacrifice. I was to murder 3 million people on planet Earth. And he was a sacrifice to see if I could murder one of my own.
August 9, 1994. The authorities recover the body of a boy at a demolition site. It was shocking to discover that he was killed by his father, Joseph Callinger. But even more shocking was the derangement of this man. Joseph Callinger's case is one of the most harrowing in the annals of true crime. Callinger's descent into madness culminated in a series of horrifying crimes. He and his son Michael embarked on a spree of violence that included arson, torture, and murder. One of the most shocking aspects of his crime was the murder of his own son, Joseph Jr. Callinger made multiple attempts to kill Joseph Jr., including trying to push him off a cliff and attempting to trap him in a burning trailer. Finally, Callinger and Michael had drowned Joseph Jr. at a demolition site. Now, Joseph wasn't the only kid Callinger killed. He's also responsible for the death of another kid on the street. So, why was he doing this? His answer is as strange as his act. To him, His evil acts are a divine mission.
At the end of murdering all the people on earth, I was going to murder my own family and then take my own life and become God.
Strangely, Callinger, though delusional, still seems to be able to tell that his actions were wrong. But it seems that his thirst to take life is something he can't help.
What do you think of the death penalty?
I'm opposed to it.
The state has no right to take your life, but you can murder other people?
I don't think anyone has the right to take a life.
Except you?
When I'm under hallucination, I do.
Joseph Callinger's mental instability was evident not only in his violent crimes, but also in his repeated suicide attempts. While in prison, he'd made several attempts to end his life, including trying to set himself on fire. His suicidal and violent behavior led to his transfer to a mental hospital in Trenton, New Jersey, and later to another facility in Philadelphia. At this hospital, he claims to have committed more acts of violence, which he talks about in this interview.
What do you feel like doing?
Killing people.
You still feel like killing people?
Yes.
Describe the feeling that you get when you feel like killing people.
Well, last March 11th, I was hallucinating, and I took a razor blade and I cut a man's throat.
For Joseph Callinger, it wasn't about taking out young ones. It was just an impulse to snuff out anyone around. At that moment, he even had the urge to take out the interviewer.
Do you think you'd murder me, Joe?
Yes.
That's gruesome, Joe. That's horrible.
Yes, it is.
And you don't blame me if I say I hope you never get out of this place.
I hope I never do either.
March 26, 1996. Callinger died of heart failure at the State Correctional Institution in Crescent, Pennsylvania. He spent the last 11 years on his life on suicide watch. April 7, 1972. Arthur Shawcross, also known as the Genesee River Killer, began his horrifying spree of violence with the murder of a little kid. Anytime this topic's brought up, though, Shawcross becomes visibly agitated.
Why won't you talk about the two young
Stop. It's over. It's disconnect. This is over.
April 1972. Arthur Shawcross murdered Jack Blake in Watertown, New York. Shawcross sexually assaulted and strangled Blake, whose body was discovered a year later in the woods. Later that same year, Shawcross claimed his second victim, Karen Ann Hill. She was brutally raped and murdered, with dirt and leaves found jammed down her throat. After serving in the Vietnam War, where he claimed to have committed atrocities, Shawcross returned to Watertown and continued his violent ways.
You're prepared to talk about what happened in Vietnam and killing all these prostitutes. But I'm just wondering why you're prepared to talk about it and not Watertown.
I don't want to talk about it. You say one more question, I leave.
Despite the brutality of his crimes, Shawcross was released on parole after serving only 14 years of a 25-year sentence for the murders of Blake and Hill. Now, the decision would be later heavily criticized as Shawcross went on to murder at least 12 more victims between 1988 and 1990 in Rochester, New York. Shawcross always had an excuse to justify his twisted desire to murder, and again, he shows this behavior during the interview.
Some people might say, well, isn't that just an excuse to justify killing?
You believe what you want to believe. I told you how I killed, why I killed. You don't want to believe it? That's up to you.
The interview ended abruptly when the interviewer insisted on talking about the kids Shawcross murdered in Watertown.
Why won't you talk about the two young...
Stop. It's over. It's disconnect. This is over.
November 10th, 2008. Arthur Shawcross died while serving his prison sentence at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York. He was 63 years old at the time of his death.